Previously, Dr. Chism served as the director in the Office of Student Achievement and School Accountability, and then transitioned to lead the new Office of State Support in the Elementary and Secondary Education Office. Prior to joining the department, Dr. Chism held a number of positions in the field of education as a teacher, a researcher, a state policymaker at the Illinois Board of Education, where she served as an Assistant Superintendent for Innovation and Improvement. In all of her work, she has influenced and shaped education policy with the goal of ensuring that every student has access to a high-quality education and the opportunity to learn. Through her work, she continues to focus on effective strategies for improving equity and inclusion for all students, closing opportunity gaps, and cultivating culturally diverse schools. And she is one of us. Dr. Chism is a graduate of the School for the Performing Arts in Cincinnati, where she memorably appeared in a production of A Raisin in the Sun. Please welcome Dr. Monique Chism.
Now this is the truly dedicated. So in Vegas on a Saturday morning after a night out on Friday, and coming to hear a Fed speak. That deserves a congratulations by itself. I am just truly thankful for the opportunity to be here with you, and want to give a special thanks to each of you in the room, because I know very personally, as Jim mentioned, the transformative power that you as theater educators have, because you are representative of teachers who changed my life. I'm so happy also to be here celebrating the National Arts Education Week, because it's truly a time to bring important light to the importance of arts education. And so this week we've had a tremendous opportunity to do that and to hopefully shape and change the minds. I also want to say thank you to our student artists for being here. It's not very often that we have an opportunity to hear the voices and stories from our students, and so I thank them for being here and taking the time to do that. And so it's such a special kind of package to be able to be here with you today to share. I actually want to start out by saying that since I know that I'm in a room of theater educators, and in that spirit of being a true thespian, I would be happy to take notes after the presentation, because I'm in that spirit of continuous improvement. So if you have notes for me, Before I begin, though, I would like to pay homage to my teachers. First off, to thank Mr. Luther Goins, who at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts introduced me to many Black playwrights. And also Ms. Haas, who I actually still to this day don't know her first name, so we'll just go with Ms. Haas, who introduced me to Shakespeare and taught me a love for Greek mythology through Medea. I'd also like to thank Mr. Paul Kennedy, who put me in my first commercial, and to be honest, it was my only commercial. And then finally to Ms. Joyce Mahomany, who was the director of my senior play on the main stage, A Raisin in the Sun. And so to all of my teachers, I want to say a special thanks and an homage to them. So this year's conference theme, The Changing Face of Theater, is inherently anchored in a conversation about thinking about diversity and inclusion. So I want to approach our conversation today around a standpoint of dreams. And with that, I want us to think about the dreams that we have for ourselves, but also remember that before we were even born, our parents and our family members had dreams for us. My father, in fact, had a dream that I would be a boy, and that I would play basketball. But nonetheless, we start out even before we are born with people having dreams for us. Our teachers have dreams for us. And somewhere along our journey, we start to hear about this thing called the American dream and start to visualize what that dream might be for ourselves. We start to actualize what life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness might actually mean for ourselves. And however you or I might conceive of the American dream, I think we all share the common belief that as an American citizen here, that there's an inherent equality of opportunity that exists for us to be able to reach and accomplish that dream. of you are familiar with the poem by Langston Hughes entitled Harlem, which asks, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore, then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over, like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? The central question in Langston Hughes' poem is, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up, fester, run, stink, crust, sugar, sag, or explode? While the other verbs in the poem deal with decay, waste, or extinction, explode is considerably a more active and powerful word. The poem was written in 1951, and Hughes was a major leader and artist in the Harlem Renaissance movement. Hughes in this poem was specifically addressing the situation of blacks in America and talking about how they had been systematically denied for many things that brought about the American dream, like education or access to jobs or economic growth and empowerment. I could go on and on and on. But the dream at its essence is talking about the deferred dreams. And in a subtle way, or maybe not so subtle way, he makes it known that, he reminds us that dreams don't always just go away or decay. Sometimes they explode. And certainly that's what we saw in the civil rights movement, was the fight for that dream. And as we reflect on our time today, the state that we live in today, some might liken that also to what we're seeing with the Black Lives movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. We have to ask ourselves, what happens to our dreams that can't come to fruition? I want to tell you a little bit about myself so you understand a little bit about the story and where I come from. As Jim mentioned, I had the great opportunity to go to the School for the Creative and Performing Arts, but it was a little bit of a journey to get there. In fact, I was born in South Bend, Indiana, and at the age of 5, my family moved to Iowa. Actually, first Des Moines, Iowa, and then we moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And we were pretty much the typical Leave It to Beaver family. We had a mom, a dad, and 2 kids and a dog. And a very middle-class family, and things were pretty straight and narrow. When I turned 12, my parents divorced, and this actually had a very significant impact on my life. And then at the age of 14, my mom, my sister, and I moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. We moved to Cincinnati not having very much of a family base or a friend base, and so it was a brand new experience. And I have to tell you, I don't know if there's anybody in the room who's made that transition from Iowa to Cincinnati, but it was a significant transition, and within a lot of realms. So when we first moved there, we actually lived with my mom's friend, because we actually didn't have enough money to get a place of our own. And then when we did get an apartment, we ended up living in a very impoverished community where most of the houses were public housing, but somehow we had to pay for our housing. I'm not sure how that worked. But it was a very impoverished area. My mother, being the very smart woman that she is, was very concerned about the education that my sister and I would receive. So she immediately started searching for other options besides our neighborhood school, because my school that I went to is what we would call politely today a chronically underperforming school. It was a very dangerous school. There wasn't a lot of learning going on in that school. It's where dreams went to die. So we started looking into other options, and because I had been in community theater in Iowa and I had also studied dance, I auditioned for the School for the Creative and Performing Arts, and I was able to get in. And literally, I think immediately from day one, I started to notice that the opportunities that I had in my life at 14 years old were very different than the people who were living in my community with me. In fact, I recognized this first off when my boyfriend was writing me love letters, and I would have to correct his spelling and edit his letters. I said, what's going on? So at the age of 14, I didn't have the words to describe exactly what was going on, but I knew that something was wrong, and that it wasn't fair that I could have the opportunities that I was having, and the kids who lived right next door to me had different opportunities. So at that very young age, I in some way made a commitment to education and trying to change things in education. And it truly is because of the School for the Creative and Performing Arts and the teachers They changed my life, and they saved my life, and I wouldn't be standing here before you today had it not been for them. So we all know that the power of the arts is transformative. As part of the American dream, we want the best education for our children because we want them to be smart. We want them to grow up and have an understanding of self and an understanding of others. And we also know that education can open doors. This group knows intimately that in our 21st century knowledge-based economy, a well-rounded education is not a luxury, but a necessity. And you know, as I do, that the arts are an integral part of this well-rounded education. I just want to spend a little bit of time, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but sometimes the choir goes out on Friday nights and gets drunk and has to come in and practice. I'll just share a couple of tidbits because I know we all know this. But I know, I was in the choir, I know these things. So studies actually find that arts-engaged students have overall a higher GPA, particularly for high school students. It also finds that for high school students who are enrolled in competitive colleges at a higher rate if they have access to the arts and are arts-engaged. We also know that for low-income students in particular, that they are 3 times more likely to go on and earn a bachelor's degree than low-income students who do not have an arts-engaged experience. So for a host of reasons, and I could go on and on and on about the research base, but there are reasons that we need to think about absolutely making sure that arts is a part of our world-class education, well-rounded education. Arts can significantly boost achievement, it can help reduce discipline problems, it can increase the odds of students going on to graduate from college. So it is essential that we always continue to champion that, to remind people that, and to really showcase and honor that and bring honor to that message. The arts education is also essential for stimulating the creativity and innovation that will prove critical for young people. And last, but certainly not least, all of you know this, it's fun. It gives kids a reason to be excited about school, to be engaged, to get excited about play practice or band, or also to think about creative writing. So in many ways, arts education is one of the key pillars for making sure that we can improve education in our states. I want to talk just briefly about some of the progress that we as educators have made in the education field. When President Barack Obama entered office in 2009, he had a comprehensive vision for changing education systems across America. This vision was focused on the American dream by focusing on equity and access and opportunity for all students. That vision included changing improvements across the entire continuum from pre-K all the way through post-secondary education. So just a couple of things that have happened under his watch. First, he set out to fix No Child Left Behind. I think that we can all agree that No Child Left Behind had some really strong tenets in it. It helped to disaggregate data. We had better understanding of where students were struggling. It ushered in standards and assessments and accountability systems. But in many ways, it was broke, and it was not working for educators across the nation any longer. He also focused on making sure that we were ensuring that all students were taught to higher standards, that we had an expectation for college and career readiness for all students in all states, so that kids in Massachusetts were also as competitive as kids in Mississippi. So an intense focus on higher standards. He also set out to make sure that we were turning around our lowest performing schools, and also focus on ensuring that we had high quality preschool programs in place for our earliest learners. He focused on better recruitment, preparation, retention, and also rewarding and honoring our teachers and thanking them for the work that they do. He also set out to make sure that STEM was a focus for education, and focused also on making sure that we were handling the dropout crisis by focusing on ways to improve achievement for students and increase graduation. There has been an increased effort across the education field around innovation and improvement, and that is at the hands of all of you in this room and our teachers and leaders and principals and administrators across the nation. And we are seeing now that there is an increased emphasis from our Secretary King, on the importance of a well-rounded education. That in too many ways, No Child Left Behind siloed us around just reading and math and science and narrowed the curriculum, but now really emphasizing the importance of a well-rounded education that includes the arts. So I'm happy to say that for the last 4 years, I've been part of this administration trying to work on some of these changes. And I want to thank all of you in the room because, as I said, it would not be without you. And I'm proud to say that we have made significant progress. But we still do have a long way to go. We have a number of things that we have to accomplish together and a lot of hard work that we need to do. So for all the progress that we have made, you can still look across the nation and you can see that things are very separate and unequal. In fact, recent studies find that our schools are now more desegregated today than they were in the 1950s. So we have to ask ourselves where the opportunity exists and what we're going to do about it. I'm very excited that we have a new law, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which we'll be talking about a little bit more this afternoon, and I'm happy that Lynn Tuttle is going to join me for that conversation. And in our new law, I'm very encouraged that we as a nation can galvanize around the important and pressing matters facing education today. We have a very important responsibility to look at the next generation because we are preparing the next batch of teachers, we are preparing the next batch of leaders and doctors and lawyers, and yes, even politicians. So it's really important that we get this right. We often talk about, I often hear people say, and I often say myself, that the civil rights issue of our time is education, and I've said that myself. But I want us to stop for just a minute and think about and contemplate what that really means. It's easy to say that every child deserves opportunity, regardless of race, disability, zip code, or family. It's very easy, it kind of rolls off the tongue when you feel good saying it. It's easy to say it. It's easy to say that we expect excellence from every child. But for some reason, it's much harder to ensure that we have the policies, the practices, and the procedures in place to support this reality. When we focus on education as a civil rights issue, it changes the cadence of the conversation. It means that we seek to identify and acknowledge the policies that are biased. It means identifying and acknowledging and addressing the attitudes, the dispositions, and the beliefs that lead to a culture of low expectations. It means saying out loud that if we really believe that all kids deserve a well-rounded education, we as the citizens of this nation would not continue to turn a blind eye at our intentional disinvestment, and I use disinvestment intentionally, our intentional disinvestment in our urban, rural, and tribal communities across the nation. We as citizens of this nation wouldn't just have dreams for our kids, but all kids. The fight for educational opportunity and the fight for civil rights has been and always will be inextricably linked. 61 years later, after Brown versus Board of Education desegregation case, education still remains an urgent civil rights issue. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act has built a very strong foundation for which our nation's schools can build from, and it works to make sure that we have the resources in place to protect the students who are most in need. It will help to create a solid foundation, and it will make sure that when we see students in our nation who are failing, that the adults will come together and make sure that dreams are not deferred. But you know, and I know, that this takes hard work, hard, constant work, to make transformative change. And it's not just change. So I want us to think about it in terms of transformative change, which really means changing the attitudes, dispositions, beliefs, and behaviors of people within the system. And we can do that. It's really great in the space of theater. So it's our jobs as the adults in this system to do everything that we can to first and foremost have honest and courageous conversations about inequality in our system. And I have to say, with all due respect, if you are not comfortable having these conversations, please get comfortable, because our kids are depending on you and they need it to happen. But we have to do more than have a conversation. We have to have conversations that are followed by action. So we need everyone. We need our students, we need our parents, we need our schools, faith communities, government officials, and also educators. And we have to have that happen now. We can't wait for people to become comfortable. We can't wait for the next event. We can't wait till we have the courage. We have to do it now. No matter where you are in the continuum of adults, and so wherever you sit, wherever your place is in this system, I fully believe that you have the influence and you have to work for that influence to increase opportunities and access for kids from the place that you are. We must think of ourselves as leaders in the space that we occupy in order to effectuate transformative change. Moving the conversation forward, followed by action, is part of the work that so many of us do today, and it's the reason why we are in this effort together. And it's never been more important. The amazing thing is, as you know, we can use arts as a strategy to advance these conversations. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things, and I'm actually pulling this from last year's Keynote panel. There were a lot of things that were discussed, but first and foremost, we can use the arts to help build community. It's essential that we think about our productions as not just an opportunity to build talent and to showcase that talent, but an opportunity to build community across conversations. In the theater, you have the power to bring voice and understanding to those who have been marginalized, discriminated, left out, overlooked, and silenced. You have either existing right now the power or the influence to change what gets produced, to have honest conversations and sometimes painful conversations about the policies that are in place that limit the opportunities to talk about controversial issues or to introduce to the community key things that will help start the healing process. In terms of policy, I think that one thing that we could all leave here today is start to think about how we approach colorblind casting or neutral casting, or however you want to phrase it. But there really is, at this point in time, no reason that we have to stick to traditional casting protocols. In fact, when I was in A Raisin in the Sun, my director was a white woman, and Ruth was played by an Australian with accent and all, and Travis was a young white male. So we did many non-traditional casting at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts, and I think what our directors focused on was the story, the essence of what the human spirit was trying to share through that play and through that work, rather than the physical appearance of the people on stage. Arts can bring us together, and so when we think about the power of productions and to start to have the conversation and the dialogue, and to bring awareness to people and bring them to a place of compassion for the other, caring about others who are different from ourselves or our realm of familiarity. Parents and community members and teachers all need to have the opportunity to engage in these conversations, and we all need to think of our productions as educational experiences for our communities. Actually, pulling from the 2015 Educational Theater Association Keynote panel, a dialogue about diversity, and in talking about the provocative work, Jean McKeon said that you can do something controversial, but if you do it in a way that is respectful to the community, it gives them a chance to build understanding and empathy. And I think that's the essence of what it is that we're trying to do, to think about the things that happen before the production, and then post-production, in order to bring a conversation and a dialogue around the work. So when we say that education is the civil rights issue of our time, if we really mean it, then we're talking about a social movement that will bring about transformative change. As I close, I want to look back and reflect on Lorraine Hansberry's work, A Raisin in the Sun. This was a 3-act play, and at the core, it was certainly about dreams of prosperity. and moving from low-income housing into a middle-class community. However, the play was also about a whole range of politically sensitive issues. If you remember, Ruth was vexed by the question of terminating a pregnancy. Benita introduced her family to Africa through OESE, thus complicating the narrative about what it meant to be Black in America and race and ethnicity within the Black community. We also see that Walter Lee and Ruth are fighting to hold on to their marriage. And we see that the family is struggling, as many families do, to stay together and to grow together. But ultimately, the play is about respecting the humanity of people. There's a point in the play that you might remember where Walter Lee has just lost all of the family's money from their father's insurance, and he was trying to better the family by a get-rich-quick scheme that failed. And the family is in the living room, and everyone is just at their lowest point of despair. And Benita, his sister, turns to Mama and says that there is nothing left to love about her brother. And Mama says to Benita, there is always something left to love. If you ain't learned that, then you ain't learned nothing. Have you cried for that boy today? I don't mean for yourself or for the family because we lost the money. I mean for him, for what he's been through and what it's done to him. Child, when do you think is the time to love somebody the most? When they done right and made things easy for everybody? Well, then you ain't through learning, because that ain't the time at all. It's when he's at his lowest and he can't believe in himself no more because the world done whipped him so. When you start to measure someone, measure him right, child. Measure him right. And make sure that you take into account all the hills and the valleys that he done come to get to this place. How many of our students come to us with dreams that are about to explode because the world done whipped them so? For our students, let's commit to measure them right. It is a significant responsibility to carry the title of educator. You are the individuals that will help our students discover, dream, believe in themselves, and realize the potential of our nation's promise. So like so many patriotic public servants who have come before us, our reward is in what we see in our students. It's not the big paychecks, it's not the glamour of our name and lights. It's that we know that we have helped our students become the best version of themselves, which ultimately helps our nation become the best version of itself. In changing our worlds, our sons and our daughters' best qualifications are not what they do, it's what they know. Our commitment to their education means giving them knowledge that they need to lead and to be good community members. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you, and a special thanks to each and every one of you for the hard work that you do each and every day on behalf of children. And personally, please keep doing what you're doing. I had a theater educator come up to me yesterday and said that he was thinking about leaving the profession because it had just gotten too hard. But this is the time when we need you most, now more than ever. And so thank you for all you do and the opportunity to be here with you today.
We have just a few minutes for some questions for Dr. Chism. We have two mics, one on the right side, one left side. Do we have any questions on this side? There's a question.
Question for you, because I always struggle with this. I have absolutely no problem casting non-white students in typically white roles. However, anytime some of my white students want to perform, say, August Wilson, I get really uncomfortable with that because I feel like August Wilson's voice is a specific voice of that Black community. do I just need to get over myself? Because it's,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me because I feel like I'm being insulting to the intent of that story. I'm just curious what you
No,
think about
I
that.
love that you have that awareness, and so thank you first off for having that awareness. And last night at dinner, we were having this conversation about the importance of self-reflection. And so I would actually start with asking yourself why you're having that uncomfortableness, and actually work to the core of that, because there's something there. And as you gain that understanding and that self-awareness, you can bring that into the production. But at the end of the day, it's about honoring the vision of the playwright, and that doesn't have to be done through color, right? So August Wilson is a powerful, powerful playwright, and if you have the right people in those roles, then that message comes across regardless of the color of the character that's on stage.
Rebecca? Just as a background, last year we performed Midsummer Night's Dream, and we had interracial casting, and we had a complaint from a parent, a Caucasian parent, who after some fact-finding, we essentially found out that it was about the fact that she didn't want her daughter kissing a young black performer. How do you propose that we handle when it comes down to community pressure? How do you propose we handle that?
That's a great question. I actually played Helena in Midsummer Night's Dream too. That's probably the most difficult role. That is a great question. I think first of all, I would say I don't want my kids kissing anybody. But so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. No, but I think it's different if the parent is anonymous or if they actually made themselves known. And I think it's an opportunity for a conversation, really. At the end of the day, the parent has the right to choose what it is that they want for their child. But you also have the right as the director to say that doesn't fit with what we value as a production team or as a cast. And we would really love to have your daughter at the production, but we can't go on without her. And so at the end of the day, they have that right to make those decisions, but you also are empowered to do what's right for your vision for the cast.
Thank you for your work with me. So as a straight white male from Portland, Oregon, one of the whitest cities in the United States of America, in a high school that is one of the whitest schools in Portland, that's where my starting place is in terms of the context of my work where I'm at. I wanted to kind of like address like something for me is kind of it's the hard part of being a theater teacher who cares about this issue. So I don't know about the rest of you, but for many of us, the arts are still seen as an elective versus a choice. In my district, we to graduate from high school, you have to have 1 arts credit, but that's watered down by the fact that you can also take a third year of second language. And it's often watered down by the fact that kids can find ways to avoid getting into classes. And I know that the Senate passed, they put language into the recent education bill to make arts core the subject. And I just get so immensely frustrated because even though I'm a very white school, still 20% of my population is minority and 8% of it is African American. And then I keep looking at the statistics, it's really just kind of crazy. Like you go to the nonprofit organizations in New York City, which is the best place to get statistics from, 38% of all roles are minority roles, and that's the core nonprofits. But then you get to Broadway, it drops down to 24%. And when you look at the audiences, you got 68% of the Broadway audience is female, 44 years old average, and 80% of the audience is Caucasian. And I hear you, and I think I understand what my duty is in terms of production and casting, encouraging, advocating, and constantly getting out to the students as best as I can. But what can the federal government do to start to enforce, put meat behind this policy of the arts as being core, and put meat behind the policy of it as a civil rights issue, so that we can actually fight for the rights of our students in our schools? I just don't know what's agreement.
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for that. And I think it's really important, as we think about the education system in totality, to think about the important role that each of us play in our space. And so inherently, education is a local control issue. And so that's what you see at the very essence of the Every Student Succeeds Act. I don't know if it transfers because the power was already there, but it definitely highlights the importance of local flexibility, local decision-making, and making sure that the accountability systems and the structures are in place, are set in a way that reflect the values of that state and those communities. In terms of the state level, the state's responsibility is then to provide resources and opportunities and supports in order for the local educators to be able to do the very hard and difficult work that they do. At the federal level, we are there to protect the civil rights of all students, to make sure that no students fall through the cracks. And so our role is definitely through our regulations that are out right now for, we have different waves of regulations that are in different cycles, which I'll talk about this afternoon. But through our regulations to make sure that we are honoring that and to put that into to practice. And also through our guidance. I think that you'll see when we come out with our Title IV Part A guidance, the school support and academic enrichment program, the new Title IV program, that we are trying to work very hard to ensure that there is a focus on the importance of the integration of arts. We also do that through our technical assistance, and so there's ways that we can partner with different districts or different schools or different associations to amplify how people have been able to break down barriers or have conversations or to think outside of the box in this space. We're happy to have those opportunities to have a national light on some of these things. But essentially, we are here to support the hard work that you are doing, and so it's really good for you to let us know how we need to lean in or what we need to do differently. Our secretary, John King, has probably taken every opportunity that he's had since he's been in that position in December to champion and echo the importance of a well-rounded education that includes the arts. And so we have a strong advocate. And I am a career person at the Department of Education, so there are also many career staff who also carry that vision and that message. And so I think with that, what I'd really love to hear is how we at the federal government can be better partners with you to help do that.
Okay, a reminder that Dr. Chism will be speaking this afternoon in a workshop, but we're going to seamlessly move on from one thing to the next, so stay in your seats and be patient. Thank you.